Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch on Saturday. Hey, it's the 1st of February, and we're looking at a lot of moisture in the west and pretty mild conditions across most, but not all, of the United States. Well, here's what I'm watching. We have that heavy snow situation out west, rain in the lower elevations, and atmospheric rivers. That's a topic worth exploring, and that's certainly connected to what you're seeing out in the western U.S., but it also applies to other parts of the country sometimes. We have lots of warmth and some Arctic air trying to reestablish itself in certain parts of the country, and a midweek rain and storm system that I'm keeping an eye on. Ohio River Valley moving into the northeast. Here's a look at the lower 48, where a look at the visible satellite loop as we change from infrared to the visible across the country, and it's kind of cool to look at that. The first thing that catches my attention is because it affects me locally here. 50 miles either side of me in Springfield, the sun is out and it's a nice day, but we are stuck in stratus clouds, and that fog and stratus deck runs from West Virginia all the way up and curves in a U shape up into Kansas. So if you're under one of those in the wintertime, it's underneath a temperature inversion. It's very frustrating as a forecaster, too. You can be as much as 15 to 20 degrees off on your high when you get one of these cloud decks and you didn't expect it. Anyway, we have a system that produces some snow. We'll take a closer look at that right in the Boston area and in extreme eastern portions of Massachusetts. And of course, the most interesting weather here is across the northern plains and also the surges of moisture you can see in the northwest. Look at the 500 millibar flow. There's that disturbance producing the precipitation in the Boston area. Another little weak disturbance in the flow with some snow we'll take a closer look at. But generally speaking, this is a zonal weather pattern with weak disturbances, a lot different than what we've seen. We'll take a tour of the lower 48 here. This is the surface map, shows fronts, areas of low and high pressure, general weather features. And to start with, we will zoom in here to the northern plains. We have a warm front basically attached to a low up there in southern Canada. And this warm front has brisk southeasterly flow now through Minnesota. And this map was at 9 a.m., this surface plot map. But I'm recording this a few hours later, and now some light snow has broken out over much of Minnesota. And in fact, they do have winter weather advisories out in anticipation of where that snow is headed. If we go into the northeast, there's that high right there. Now we go into New England, where temperatures are only in the single digits. We talked about how that's where winter was going to hang on despite much of the country warming up. That certainly has been true. We go down the coast here a little bit. We have one little weak weather system there in Virginia. And temperatures are warming into the 50s in the warm zone of that system right there. Heading further off to the southeast, a cool front sort of cuts Florida into a third and two-thirds there, with very mild and very humid conditions south of that front, with dew points in the low 70s. Meanwhile, northeasterly flow here in northern Florida, with temperatures only in the 50s and 60s and much drier air. In the deep south, it's actually and in the Midwest and Central Plains, it's kind of a warming trend here, with winds that are coming around like this. So I know I live in Springfield, Missouri, and we're only going to have temperatures in the low 50s today because the cloud cover is what's hanging on. But tomorrow we'll get well into the 60s. And then finally we'll go to the, hang on a second. Finally we'll go to the northwestern U.S. And you can see this front is slammed through Washington, is now in Idaho and Oregon. It's about to slow its progress, and it's waiting on the next storm system to kind of come in, and it is in connection with all the precipitation that's occurring out west, both the rain and the mountain snows. Let's do a quick radar tour of the U.S., too. A very helpful tool. And I was talking about that snow in Minnesota. It's mostly in the eastern one half of the state. Zooming in a little bit, we got some snow reports there. Let's click on that one there. It looks like a 2-inch storm total there, north and a little bit north west of St. Cloud. Another little report there. It's a 1-inch total. But anyway, this is closing in on Minneapolis, St. Paul area here, Duluth, Minnesota, southeastern portions of the state of Minnesota, and eventually here's Eau Claire and even parts of northern Iowa will get in on this. If we go out to the east, I remember I showed you that weather system in Virginia, but there's really nothing in connection with that on radar. But there are some snow reports from snow that has been and is still moving through that part of the world. Just click on a few of these here. We got a 1-inch snow report there in the extreme northeastern portions of Massachusetts. This is mostly snow leaving Boston but getting on down the coast toward Plymouth and into the Cape Cod area. So that's a storm of interest. And then really nothing much else going on radar until you get out to the Pacific Northwest and the Intermountain region, and there we have a lot of precipitation still going on there. If we click on Salt Lake City there, we had a non-thunderstorm wind gust of 62 miles per hour, and some snow in the higher elevations there, 4-inch snow at Powder Mountain, and rain in the lower elevations. This is always true this time of year out west. So just because the radar is showing it as green doesn't necessarily mean it is. You got to know your elevation, and folks that live out there have been watching these maps for a while and can figure it out for sure. Well, when you're trying to identify areas of potential heavy precipitation, there's a concept called precipitable water, and it's useful. It actually is just a theoretical concept. It doesn't actually happen. But if you were to take the humidity in a column of air straight above wherever you are on the Earth and extract all the water vapor into liquid, it would into a rain gauge. This is how much you would get. Now, actual rainfall and snowfall rates are dependent on a lot of other factors. But the reason I show this is because, it sort of graphically outlines atmospheric rivers. You've heard that term. We're about to show you this one here in California. And also, it just kind of gives you sort of a litmus test of what the precipitation possibilities are. So if you see high precipitable water, you kind of look for other things to see, well, how much of that is actually going to be extracted and how much rain or snow or whatever precipitation we're talking about is actually going to fall. So here's the precipitable water. This is the GFS model, and this is California in the center of the screen. And I'll just kind of toggle, and this is interesting for several reasons. First of all, you can see this river is just kind of is coming in. It hits the areas of Northern California. Then there's a second surge that moves down into more of Central California before it eventually dissipates. And another one hits, this is Friday right here. So, and the West Coast is very used to these systems coming in. There's just ample moisture off the ocean. So this is going to translate to heavier snows and rains in parts of California, which, by the way, all things equal, California is supposed to be in their rainy and snowy season in the winter and very dry other times. So this pattern is not unexpected. Now, let's see how skilled I am to change this view to a, let's say a continental view. Let's do that. There we go. And you can again see those rivers coming ashore in California. Now, I want to call your attention out to the second area that I want to watch, and that's this area right here as we go through the week. And just kind of watch what happens. It's bone dry through the south central and all of the eastern U.S. And then we watch Gulf moisture come up here, slow but sure. This is Wednesday and getting into Thursday right around here. So we're starting to see high precipitable water amounts. So if there's a storm system that can tap into that, which it does appear as if there is one, a front, then we'll probably get some pretty good rains, maybe some thunderstorms out of that. We'll talk about that in a second. So again, precipitable water can be handy for finding weather patterns in the atmosphere. So we can often look out to the Pacific and see storm systems approaching. Here's the next one that will be affecting the western coast of the United States, a cutoff system here, but this system is moving in, and as you saw in the precipitable water, each of those is taking a slightly different track in. Here's total precipitation. Now this, if it occurs as snow, this is assuming you take the snow and melt it down, but we're looking at extreme values of precipitation here, where you're looking at the orange, the purple color, first of all, is about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. You start getting into these yellows and oranges here. This is approaching 5 inches of liquid precipitation, even 7 inches of liquid precipitation. So you convert that to snow, you're talking about feet of snow in some of the higher elevations. There is, of course, a slew of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. Winter storm warnings in this case are always going to be at the higher elevations here and in central Idaho, with winter weather advisories where it's a little unclear because of the topography, what elevation you're at, where it changes from rain to snow makes a big difference. And again, I always reference, if you're out there, you know where these areas are, but it gets pretty detailed in terms of where mountain ranges are. So needless to say, a lot of energy, a lot of moisture to fuel rain and snow. In fact, as far as significant weather is concerned, we can extend this into Sunday, where snows are still expected in Medford, over into the Boise area and in the mountains of northwestern Wyoming, and even along coastal areas of Washington. And then on Monday, still some snow in just about those exact same areas, except extending down the Sierra Nevada a little bit more. As far as the next couple of days unfold, we'll take a look at the GFS precipitation type for noon on Monday. And what that's showing basically is a milder pattern, certainly, of air across much of the southern U.S. through this area here. But look at this Arctic high poking its nose into the northern plains with snows occurring there. The atmospheric river still engaged there. We'll switch to the temperature forecast. This is the Weather Service's opinion. You can certainly see lonely temperatures there below zero and single-digit highs in parts of Montana on Monday, but look at how much of the country, if it's orange or yellow, it's above normal, with temperatures well into the 60s and 70s across Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. If we take a look at the next map here on Tuesday, this Arctic air makes a little bit of inroads southward into Iowa, into parts of Michigan, but not quite south, not penetrating south like a lot of these have done earlier this in the winter back in January. But there is an impact there when you have this flow. The easterly winds cool Nebraska down on Tuesday. Still a large section of the country is pretty warm on noon Wednesday. This is this precipitation area we took a look at in the precipitable water survey, and notice there could be some snow along the edge of that Arctic air in Pennsylvania. That's worth watching. Still pretty snowy in the northern plains with a series of systems moving across there. The high temperatures on Wednesday recovering again through parts of the Ohio River Valley. Still pretty cold. And by the way, if you've looked at these, the star indicates the coldest forecast high temperature. That's been in Montana the entire time. And on Thursday, this weather system, again, could produce some New England snows, also parts of New York State. Kind of getting far out here. This is being recorded on a Saturday afternoon. Another little wedge of high pressure moving in there, and another system approaching the coast of California. And as we go finally to the highs on Thursday, the East Coast warms up. So even if it does snow in the Northeast, it's going to recover pretty quickly. And then finally, you see some inroads of some of these high temperature departures coming in here on February 6th to northern plains, moderating in some areas, but penetrating more into the central part of the plains. That'll do it for this edition of Weather to Watch. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you get a chance as well, and we'll see you on the next video.